On the ground in Nepal, 2 more people reportedly killed today, adding to 19 fatalities reported yesterday in the country's worst unrest in decades. A short while ago, Tashi Bista filed this report for CNA from the capital, Kathmandu.
As you can see behind me, that's the central building of the Parliament of Nepal, which was stormed and set on fire by the student-led Gen Z protesters about 2 hours ago, after a long standoff with the police and the army here. Finally, the police and the army gave up and they had to retreat and leave the area. And then the students went on to storm the building, set it on fire, and then later on also went on to the Council of Ministers. There's a location called Singadarbar where all the ministries, most of the ministries are housed. They even set most parts of Singadarbar on fire, and also a lot of police stations and district administration offices across the area. As the latest developments follow, the Home Minister had resigned last night following the death of 19 protesters yesterday. Today we only had reported 2 protesters who lost their lives this afternoon. The Prime Minister has resigned, and there's the rumors that he has fled on an army helicopter out of the country. Several of the ruling political party members, their houses got ransacked by protesters, their houses got stormed by protesters, and some of them were beaten up very brutally. And there's reports of a few deaths in families of politicians on the ruling government. So as you can see, there's utter chaos here, and there's rumors that the army might want to have a talk with the protesters to form a new government. As for now, it looks like the government has completely collapsed and the youth are completely in control now.
Joining us is Puspa Sharma. He's visiting Senior Research Fellow of the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Sharma. That report we have now, possible collapse of the government, and earlier our correspondent saying, I see fire all around me.
Indeed, that's true. After yesterday's killing of 19 protesters, there was huge grief and anger among the people and among the youth for sure. So despite the government perhaps showing some sensitivity and imposing curfews all over, this didn't work, and it was expected that this shouldn't work. So the youth, they came out in large numbers, and they have ransacked and stormed the leaders' residences, the Parliament building, Supreme Court, the Central Secretariat. So the condition actually is extremely fluid and volatile in Nepal. And because this is a leaderless movement, the youth, they came out spontaneously, although they had some plans of organizing it. And there was perhaps some people who are organizing it who are behind the organization. But it is essentially a leaderless movement. So we don't know what's going to happen and who's going to take the lead over here.
All right, a point you made, and it is surprising when I hear that, the moves made by the government, they were expected that they would not work even in the first instance. So the government did not foresee, or they did foresee what might happen and failed to act to contain this public anger.
I think the government didn't anticipate this scale of a crisis because the preparations that were there for the protest were extremely weak. The first thing was, when the protests were announced, the government had to talk to the youth, listen to the grievances, and perhaps try to console them and then bring them to table to discuss what would be the way forward. Next, when the protests were announced, there should have been an anticipation because the entire political situation for the past several months in Nepal is quite fluid. So the government perhaps only thought that these were the school-going, college-going kids without any political sense. So they would perhaps just come and do a peaceful protest, and that is what they have said, that they would protest peacefully, and that would be over. To the lack of preparation, the government is also seen the Home Minister's meeting at the parliamentary committee when the protests were going on outside. So that shows the lack of preparation that the government actually had made to prepare itself for the, for the kind of thing that we saw, the mayhem that we saw.
Well, because the first, I suppose, what triggered this was a government move to regulate social media. So had they focused and addressed that particular concern and they walked it back in any case, if it walked that back then and perhaps not fired on students, this would have been nipped in the bud yesterday.
Well, I mean, the trigger for the protest was the social media ban, the blocking of the social media sites, in order to regulate it, as what the government said. But once the protest started yesterday, even the government lifting the ban at that time perhaps might not have helped, because the protest then, as I said, was leaderless. There were several kinds of people, several kinds of youth, and there was very deep-seated public frustration among the people with regard to corruption, with regard to ill governance, and particularly seeing the same old face, in the helm of the political leadership as prime minister for the past 3 decades. So that deep-seated frustration of the people was to be vented out. So when the social media were working, perhaps the youth, they were expressing their anger, they were expressing their frustration on social media, and we could see that as well. But when that was blocked as well, perhaps they found the street to be the place where they could put this up. That is why they say that the protest is particularly because of the ban of the social media. But when they were preparing for the protest, they said that it is also against corruption. It is also against ill governance. So perhaps before the protest started, the day before yesterday, if the lifting of the ban had taken place, then maybe the protest might not have taken place in the first place. But when the protest started yesterday, I don't think even the lifting of the ban yesterday would have made much of a difference. Maybe, yes, that could be true, that the kind of mayhem that we are seeing, the kind of vandalism that we are seeing might not have taken place. It might have been a little less, but it might not have been entirely free of the kind of the movement that's going on.
All right. The fact that, as you have suggested, this is a leaderless protest. So, in fact, even if individually students might be, or young people might be, it's called the Gen Z protest because they age between 15 and 30. If they decide, oh, I might not want to go and protest today, but there is no leader, in fact, to organize and coordinate all the different young people taking part in these protests. So in this context, asking the army, as we've heard from our reporter, to take control, that is a very real possibility.
Well, I mean, this is about going forward, what next. Now, yes, as you rightly said, without a leader leading the protest, actually it is very uncertain, because the traditional political parties have all been targeted, and no one knows the whereabouts of many. Many have been actually brutally, not brutally, but have been attacked as well. So there is so much of uncertainty about what will be the next steps for Nepal. So in this case, yes, the possibility is that, and the security forces, the army has already been in discussion. That is the news coming in. But they themselves are also not sure about how to take this forward. The best thing, I think, the way forward would be perhaps to have an all-party kind of government, to come to the negotiating table, discuss the grievances, discuss the agenda forward. But that looks like a very rare possibility at this point of time. So taking over by the military temporarily until some stability is restored might be one possibility, but no one can say for sure at this point of time. And because the situation is developing very rapidly, very fast, so no one actually is in a position to say what will be the next course and where is Nepal heading to from here. That's a very difficult, actually, proposition to make at this point of time.
Dr. Puspa Sharma, visiting Senior Research Fellow of the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. Thanks for joining us to explain this fluid, complex situation.